Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
What if the greatest betrayal in your life was never loud? What if it came not with shouting or cheating, but with silence when you needed someone most? And what if the person who said they'd never leave vanished the moment things got hard? There's a form of betrayal that doesn't come with dramatic exits, screaming matches, or scandal. No, this kind cuts much deeper because it happens quietly. It's when someone you trusted, someone you gave your heart, your loyalty, and your time to, chooses convenience over commitment. They don't leave when things are light. They leave when the weight of life starts pressing down, when the storms roll in, when the fire turns up, when it's no longer easy to stay. And just like that, they disappear. They were right there when life was sunny. When everything was effortless, when the victories came easily, they celebrated you. They clapped the loudest. They called you their own. But the moment hardship appeared, the moment your spirit needed steady ground, they vanished. No explanation, no warning, just silence. And that isn't just abandonment, that's betrayal. You see, loyalty doesn't prove itself when the world is smiling with you. It reveals itself when the world goes silent, when chaos erupts and you can barely breathe. Loyalty isn't about who shows up when it's easy. It's about who stays when staying hurts. And if someone walked out on you in your darkest hour, when your soul was barely hanging on, they didn't just betray your trust, they betrayed your worth. Because love is not dictated by comfort. It's defined by choice. If they only stayed when it was comfortable, when it served them, then they never truly loved you. Real love doesn't run from the fire. Real commitment doesn't collapse under pressure. The truth is, people will say they care. They'll promise to stand beside you. But pain has a way of revealing what praise never could. The fire always exposes the fakes. And here's where many people go wrong. They start explaining away the betrayal. They say, maybe they were going through something. Or, maybe I was asking for too much. Maybe they didn't know how to carry my pain. But let me be honest with you. Love doesn't vanish when life gets tough. Loyalty doesn't crumble when things aren't pretty. If they left while you were bleeding, if they walked away while your heart was breaking, they weren't your partner. They were a passerby. And hear this clearly. You never have to apologize for needing someone to stay when it mattered most. That isn't weakness. That's relationship. That's covenant. Wanting someone to stand by your side through both the sunshine and the storm isn't asking for too much. It's asking for what God designed love and commitment to be. You're not needy for wanting consistency. You're not dramatic for expecting presence. You're just honoring the very heart of what real relationship should look like. And if someone chose to take the easy way out instead of walking through the valley with you, that's not a person you need to hold close. That's someone you need to let go. Release them. Because abandonment, even when it comes quietly, can cut just as deep as a loud betrayal. It slices in silence, often without words, but the pain lingers just the same. Here's the part no one talks about, the kind of betrayal that hides in plain sight. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't look like someone packing a bag and leaving. Sometimes they're still there, still in the house, still sharing your space, still sleeping beside you. But their heart left a long time ago. They stopped caring. They stopped praying with you. They stopped noticing your tears. They became a shadow of the person they once were, a ghost with a face. That's betrayal too. Because when someone refuses to show up for you emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, even though their body is physically present, they've broken something sacred. They've abandoned you without ever walking out the door. And let's be honest, someone halfway in is more damaging than someone who leaves. Why? Because they leave you in a state of emotional limbo, confused, questioning holding on to someone who's already gone in every way that matters. You've got to protect your heart, your peace, your soul, from people who treat commitment like it's optional. From those who are only around when life is smooth, when the skies are blue, and the winds are calm. Because storms will come. That's not a possibility, that's a promise. That's life. And if someone isn't willing to walk through the storm with you, they should not be allowed to celebrate your breakthrough. Don't let their absence in the struggle earn them a seat at your victory table. You owe no space to those who disappeared when things got difficult. If they couldn't handle your brokenness, they don't deserve your healing. If they didn't love you in the valley, They have no place on the mountaintop. Now hear this clearly. Forgiveness is between you and God. Release the bitterness. Let go of the resentment. Free yourself from the weight of the grudge. But don't ignore the lesson that storm taught you. Don't forget who went silent when life got loud. Don't overlook who vanished when pressure exposed the truth. Some people are not meant to stay. They enter your life as a test. They're not there to remain. They're there to reveal. And when the test ends, you don't go back and retake it. You take the experience. You learn from it. You grow because of it. And one day, you thank God. Not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it brought. Because loyalty isn't confirmed in seasons of comfort. It's revealed in the middle of the chaos. It shows up, or it doesn't. When everything falls apart, and once someone has shown you who they are by choosing convenience over commitment, by stepping away when they should have leaned in, you don't forget that. You don't excuse it. That's not someone you allow back into the sacred space of your life. Not again. Not ever. There's something profoundly sacred about vulnerability. When you let someone in, really in, you're not just sharing stories. You're revealing your soul. You're peeling back the mask the world sees and offering the version of yourself few ever meet. The version that holds your fears, your scars, your wounds, and your truths. That level of access is not casual. It's not surface level. It's trust in its rawest, most fragile form. And when someone takes that trust and turns it into a weapon, when they take what you revealed in sacred confidence and use it against you, that is one of the deepest cuts a human heart can endure. Because betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the ones you sat next to, the ones you cried in front of, the ones who said, "You're safe here." They were there in your darkest moments. They knew the weight you were carrying. And still, when their mood shifted or their motive changed, they used what you handed them in love as ammunition to wound you. That's not just painful. It's a violation of trust, of safety, of your very humanity. And I want you to truly hear this. If someone has ever taken your private pain and turned it into gossip, if they ever use your trauma as leverage in an argument, if they threw your past in your face to win a moment, they didn't just make a poor choice. That wasn't a slip-up. That wasn't just immaturity. That was a betrayal of your soul. That was a betrayal of your humanity. No apology, no excuse, no casual, "I didn't mean it like that," can erase what they chose to do with what you gave them in sacred trust. Some people have no idea what it costs you to open up. They don't realize the weight behind your words, the strength it takes to speak about the things you've hidden, to revisit the chapters of your life that you once swore you'd never read aloud again. And when they misuse what you shared, when they take your truth and turn it into gossip, judgment, or control, they're not just being careless. They're revealing something much deeper, that they were never worthy of that part of you in the first place. When you choose to be vulnerable with someone, you're not asking them to fix you. You're not expecting perfection. You're asking for gentleness, for care. You're saying, "This is sacred. Please handle with tenderness." And when they respond not with empathy, but with criticism, manipulation, or exposure, they're revealing a brokenness in themselves that runs far deeper than anything you shared. There are people who will smile to your face and nod when you speak, but behind that smile, they're studying your wounds. Not to help heal them, but to learn their depth so that they'll know exactly where to strike if the moment comes. That's not paranoia. That's reality. And this is why some of the deepest pain we carry doesn't come from enemies. It doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we once trusted most, the ones we believed would protect us. And after facing that kind of betrayal, you have every right to protect your peace, to protect your story, to protect your heart from being shattered in the same place twice. Now hear me clearly. I'm not telling you to carry bitterness. I'm not saying to withhold forgiveness. Forgiveness is for your freedom. It releases you from their grip. But what I am saying is this. Don't hand a second chance to someone who weaponized your vulnerability the first time. Don't reopen the door for someone who took your honesty and turned it into ammunition. Because love doesn't humiliate. Trust doesn't punish. And loyalty doesn't expose your private battles for public conversation. That kind of betrayal isn't just hurtful, it's disorienting. It shakes your entire view of what love, trust, and safety are supposed to be. It cuts deep, so deep, that many of us carry that wound in silence, never fully naming it. There will come a time in your journey when you have to ask yourself a sobering question. Who has access to my soul? Because not everyone deserves a front row seat to your healing. Not everyone should have permission to carry your story. And just because someone says, "I'm sorry," doesn't mean they're safe. An apology without change behavior? That's not healing. That's manipulation, just delivered with better timing. Some betrayals don't call for closure or conversation. They call for boundaries. Not every wound needs a reunion. You've grown through too much to keep circling back to people who never really saw you. You've cried in silence, sat in the dark with your own thoughts, and picked yourself up far too many times to waste your breath explaining your heart to those who only want your story, not your soul. So, don't reopen doors that God has helped you close. Don't make space again for the ones who took what you whispered in vulnerability and forged it into a weapon. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's betrayal, dressed in familiar clothing. And just because you're protecting your peace doesn't mean you're bitter. Just because you've built walls doesn't mean your heart is cold. It means you're wiser now. You understand that trust is sacred, that hearts are not toys, that your story isn't entertainment for someone else's curiosity. Because when someone takes the heart you offered, shaking, exposed, and real, and mishandles it, drops it, crushes it with carelessness, that's a betrayal you carry deep in your chest. It doesn't fade with time, and it should never be dismissed or excused. There's another kind of betrayal, though, one that comes without sound. It doesn't crash in with slamming doors or harsh words. It comes quietly, so quietly you almost miss it. It creeps in when someone you love stops showing up for you emotionally. They're still in a room, still sharing meals, still sleeping in the same bed, but something has left. Something vital. The warmth is gone. The presence. The heartbeat of connection. You feel it in the silence between words, in the spaces where laughter used to live. And that kind of absence, it can be louder than any argument, more deafening than any shout. When someone checks out emotionally, when they stop engaging with your needs, stop celebrating your joys, stop noticing your pain, that too is betrayal. It may not come with a packed suitcase or a slammed door, but it leaves a void just the same. Because love isn't just being near. Love is presence, awareness, engagement. Love hears the unspoken, feels the unsaid, and shows up even in the tension. And when someone makes the decision, yes, it is a decision to stop listening, to tune you out, to no longer care about your emotional well-being, they may still be there physically, but in every other way, they're gone. That's why some of the loneliest people in the world aren't sleeping alone. They're lying next to someone every night who stopped loving them a long time ago. And that ache, the one that hits quietly but deeply, it lingers because you still remember. You remember when they used to ask how you were and actually care to hear the answer. You remember when they looked at you, not just glanced, but really saw you, with eyes that listened before words even left your mouth. You remember the way they used to reach for your hand, not out of routine or obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to feel close. And now they barely look up. They scroll. They nod. They mutter responses. They pass you by like you're part of the furniture, like your presence is just part of the background. And what's worse, you begin to internalize it. You start turning the questions inward. Did I say something wrong? Am I not enough? Why do I feel invisible in my own relationship? But let me speak this truth into your spirit. You are not crazy. You're not being too sensitive. You're not asking for too much. Because emotional connection isn't a bonus in love. It's the very oxygen that keeps it alive. It's not extra. It's essential. When someone deliberately shuts you out, when they build walls where there used to be bridges, when they begin treating your presence like a background noise to their daily routine, they're not just distant. They're betraying the very core of intimacy. Because presence without engagement, that's not closeness. That's abandonment with a mask. It's someone physically in the room, but emotionally checked out. And how can you build a future with someone who isn't even present in your now? Real relationships are not held together by what's visible. They thrive in the invisible spaces, in empathy, in effort, in affection, in the simple acts of being fully there. When those unseen essentials fade, what remains is a shell, a routine, a performance that looks like love from the outside, but feels like emptiness from the inside. And here's the hardest part. Emotional abandonment can be even more devastating than someone physically walking away. At least when someone leaves, there's clarity, a break, an ending. But when they stay without truly staying, it creates confusion. It wears on your soul like water on stone, slowly, consistently, silently. You begin to shrink inside yourself. You grow quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're tired of being unheard. You stop asking for what you need because indifference has answered you too many times. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, you begin to lose pieces of who you are, all in the name of keeping the peace. But love that costs you your voice isn't love, it's control. Love that demands your silence for the sake of someone else's comfort isn't love, it's suppression. When someone betrays you by ignoring your emotional needs, by showing up physically but never emotionally, by standing still when you're falling apart, that isn't a small issue. It's not a minor disconnect. It's a fracture so deep that it splinters trust at its core. And no matter how long you've known them, no matter how many routines you share, no matter how much history exists between you, none of that can patch the damage created by emotional detachment. Silence in a place where intimacy should live, that breaks more than hearts. It breaks spirit. You deserve more. You deserve presence that actually sees you. Not glances, not gestures, presence. You deserve love that listens before words even form. Someone whose heart hears yours without you needing to beg for attention. You deserve someone who doesn't just sit beside you in the same room, but sits with you, heart to heart, soul to soul. Someone who looks you in the eyes and says with their whole being, I'm here. Ikare. I still choose you. That's not a fantasy. That's commitment. That's what real covenant feels like. Not just staying, but showing up. So don't settle for bodies without souls. Don't settle for, I'm here, when their heart left months ago. And don't you dare carry the weight of someone else's disconnection. If they chose to stay disengaged, if they let distance grow unchecked, if they remained outwardly present while leaving you emotionally starving on the inside, that is not on you. That is a betrayal, no matter how politely it's delivered. And no amount of carefully worded apologies can truly undo that kind of harm. Some betrayals aren't meant to be repaired. There's a common belief that forgiveness always means reconciliation, that to forgive is to let someone back in, to hand them another key, to trust them again. But here's the truth. Not every betrayal deserves a return. Some wounds require boundaries, not open doors. Forgiveness isn't always about rebuilding the relationship. Sometimes it's about releasing the pain, walking forward, and letting go, not because they apologized, not because they understand, but because your soul deserves peace more than it needs closure. I know this is difficult to accept, especially if you're someone who values grace, second chances, and redemption. Especially if you're the kind of person who keeps holding space for healing, even when it hurts. But listen closely, not every relationship is meant to be restored. Not every person is meant to return. And not everyone who's wounded you is entitled to a seat at your table, no matter how familiar their face may be. There are wounds that run so deep, they touch the very core of who you are. Wounds so raw and personal that offering someone a second chance isn't healing. It's reopening the very pain you fought so hard to survive. You see, forgiveness doesn't mean excusing what happened. It doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't leave scars or that the pain was insignificant. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the hurt. It's about releasing yourself from the heavy chains of bitterness, anger, and regret that weigh down your soul. But forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to welcome them back into your world. In fact, true forgiveness can happen from a distance. You can choose to let go of the pain without inviting the very person who caused it to come close again. Sometimes, protecting your peace means building boundaries so firm that even the sound of their return can't shake you. It's standing your ground and saying, I won't allow the same wound to be reopened by the same hands. Forgiveness isn't a green light for reconciliation. It's a green light for you, a chance to move forward with freedom, to make room in your life for the kind of love, respect, and care that you actually deserve. And if someone betrayed you so deeply that it shattered your trust, broke your peace, or cracked your very sense of identity, you don't owe them another opportunity. You don't have to sit through another round of apologies just to give them a chance to hurt you again. Because the truth is, some people don't change. Some never see the depth of the pain they've caused. Some will never understand the weight of their actions, or the echo of their words long after they've moved on. And you cannot spend your life holding your breath, waiting for them to finally get it. That burden does not belong to you. Your responsibility isn't to be their savior or their wake-up call. Your responsibility is to honor your own healing, to recognize your worth, and to protect it fiercely. When someone's betrayal takes something sacred from you, your trust, your joy, your sense of safety, you have every right to draw a firm line. You have every right to say with clarity and confidence, "I forgive you, but I will not invite you back in." And no, that doesn't make you bitter. It makes you brave. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. It makes you resilient. It shows you've grown into someone who understands that your future is too valuable to be dragged backward by a painful past. Some things are simply not worth revisiting. And sometimes the most loving, most powerful thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and not look back. Because if you allow someone who has already betrayed you to re-enter your life without clear boundaries, you risk giving them the chance to wound you again. And ask yourself, how many times must your heart be broken before you truly accept that some people are just not capable of loving you the way you deserve to be loved? This isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting you, your healing, your growth, your peace of mind. Just because someone hasn't learned their lesson doesn't mean you need to keep rereading the same painful chapter in your life. I want you to hear this clearly. Choosing to protect yourself doesn't mean you're bitter. It doesn't mean you're stuck in resentment. What it means is that you've finally learned how to guard your heart. You've made peace more important than momentary comfort. You've come to understand that healing doesn't always come from going back to the one who caused the pain. Sometimes, the greatest healing begins when you let go, for real. When you draw a line and declare, "This chapter is over. I will not let this pain narrate my story anymore." It's so easy to confuse forgiveness with reconciliation, but they're not the same. Forgiveness is about setting yourself free from the weight of what was done to you. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is something else entirely. It requires more than your forgiveness. It requires their transformation. And sometimes that transformation never comes. Not because you didn't forgive, but because they never changed. And the truth is, you cannot force someone to grow. You can't make a person acknowledge their flaws or take responsibility for the pain they've caused if they're not ready to face themselves. But what you can do, what is always within your control, is to guard your heart. You can choose to step away from anything or anyone that no longer nurtures your healing. So yes, forgive. Always forgive for your own peace. But don't mistake forgiveness for an open door. Forgiveness is not an invitation to let someone re-enter your life. It's a decision to walk forward, calm in your spirit, strong in your resolve, without them. Now, there's one final form of betrayal we need to address. One that's subtle but deeply harmful. The betrayal of your boundaries. It doesn't always arrive with shouting or dramatic exits. In fact, it often begins quietly. So quietly that you might not notice it at first. It creeps in through small compromises, subtle manipulations, and moments when your voice is silenced in the name of keeping the peace. Then one day, you look up and realize you've allowed someone to consistently override your boundaries. And here's what you must understand. That kind of betrayal can be just as painful, if not more, than an obvious lie or an act of disloyalty, because it erodes your sense of worth piece by piece. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut others out. They're not selfish demands or overreactions. Boundaries are the sacred guardrails we set to preserve our peace, our dignity, and our identity. They help define the space in which we are respected, heard, and emotionally safe. They're the lines that tell the world, this is what I will and won't allow. But when someone repeatedly crosses those lines, whether through manipulation, disrespect, or sheer disregard, they're not just being careless. They are betraying the trust you extended to them. They are showing you that your well-being is not their priority. There are many of you listening right now who have quietly allowed others to cross lines that should have never been touched. You've opened your door, your heart, your life to people who, instead of honoring your vulnerability, made you feel uncomfortable, small, invisible. They walked into sacred places within you and treated them like public ground. And each time they ignored your boundaries, whether those boundaries were spoken out loud or silently understood, They took another piece of you. Bit by bit, they chipped away at your confidence, your dignity, your sense of worth. And with every line they crossed, another wound was left behind, one that hurt even more than the last. Some of you have lived in fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of conflict, fear of losing someone you cared about. So you kept quiet. You let your boundaries blur. You let your needs get pushed aside, thinking that maybe, just maybe, keeping the peace was worth your silence. But deep down, you knew something wasn't right. Here's the truth. When you allow someone to repeatedly cross your boundaries, when you stay silent instead of standing firm, you're not just tolerating disrespect, you're teaching it. You're unintentionally teaching them that your limits are flexible, that your needs are optional, and that your value is up for negotiation. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. It didn't mean to hurt me, or maybe they don't realize how much this affects me. But let's be real. People are more aware than we give them credit for. They may not always intend to harm, but when someone ignores your boundaries again and again, it's not by accident. It's because they've learned that they can. They've seen that you'll eventually give in, that you'll apologize first, that you'll carry the weight to avoid conflict. And if you keep allowing it, they'll keep taking. They'll keep pushing. They'll keep pulling pieces of you until you forget where your line even was. But hear this in your bones. You do not owe anyone an apology for having boundaries. You don't have to explain why protecting your mental and emotional peace matters. You're under no obligation to keep saying yes to people who never respected your right to say no. You don't have to keep pouring yourself out for those who never bother to pour anything back. You're not obligated to keep letting people in when they've shown you, over and over again, that they'll only trample the space you've given them. The truth is, you can't genuinely love others well if you haven't first chosen to love yourself enough to protect your own well-being. How can you be your fullest, most vibrant self when you're constantly drained, disrespected, or manipulated by the people you're trying so hard to keep around? How can you live a joyful, meaningful life when your soul is always in a state of quiet compromise because you're too afraid to say no? Saying yes to everyone else while saying no to yourself is not love. It's self-abandonment. There are people in your life right now who may love you, yes, but they don't always honor your limits. They might mean well, but if they keep pushing past your boundaries, if they keep taking more than they give, if they keep placing their comfort above your peace, then you're faced with a decision. A hard one, but one that matters. You have to choose. Is your peace more valuable than their approval? Is your emotional clarity more important than avoiding their discomfort? Is your heart's well-being more essential than their temporary convenience? And when you make that choice, and I hope you do, stand firm in it. Let your no be just as sacred as your yes. Let me say this loud and clear. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're heartless. It doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean you're unkind. In fact, it means the opposite. It means you're strong. It means you're awake. It means you've finally decided to stop handing out pieces of yourself to those who only take without ever giving back. It means you've looked in the mirror and declared, I am worthy of respect. I am worthy of peace. And I will no longer let anyone take more than what they offer in return. It makes you someone who finally understands that your peace is sacred, your time is valuable, and your heart was never meant to be used as a doormat for others to stomp on without consequence. You were never created to be someone's emotional dumping ground. You were never meant to be kept waiting as someone's backup plan. You're not here to be anyone's afterthought or convenience. You are worth far more than being treated as someone's emotional punching bag, absorbing their chaos while they ignore your calm. You are worth more than constantly wondering where you stand in someone else's life. You are worth more than being someone's last resort, only remembered when they need something. And if someone continues to violate your boundaries, if they persist in dismissing what you need just to keep themselves comfortable, then you owe it to yourself to release them. Because anyone who genuinely loves you will never make you question your value. And those who truly respect you will honor your boundaries without hesitation, not cross them with entitlement. So, draw the line. Guard your peace like it's the air you breathe, because it is. And remember this, you don't owe anyone an explanation for valuing yourself. You don't need to defend your decision to protect your energy, your heart, and your mind. The most important person who needs to understand your worth is you. And the beautiful thing is this, once you start walking in that truth, Once you treat yourself like someone worthy of respect, you'll find that the right people will begin to do the same. Not because you demanded it, but because you lived it. So if someone refuses to see your worth, let them go. Wishing you strength, peace, and the courage to honor your boundaries every single day. Stay healthy, stay true to yourself, and don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily for more empowering content.